Recently, Disney announced plans to bring a new experience to Disney Springs, a massive indoor interactive entertainment complex called the Level 99, which is described as a first-of-its-kind destination for adults featuring real-world interactive social gaming set in artistic environments. But not too long ago, in this very same space Level 99 will soon occupy, there was another so-called first-of-its-kind project, DisneyQuest, a massive indoor interactive theme park that Disney once hoped would grow into a nationwide chain. However, that plan failed almost as soon as it began, although one of its locations managed to stay open for many years. So in this video, I want to look back at DisneyQuest, its history, its attractions, what caused its eventual demise, and how it compares against its soon-to-be modern-day successor, Level 99, now building its fourth location in the very place DisneyQuest once stood. This is the legacy of DisneyQuest. In the 1990s, downtown Disney in Orlando, Florida was rapidly expanding. The marketplace area had been around since the 70s, and by 1989, Disney added Pleasure Island, an adult-focused nighttime district with shops, entertainment venues, and nightclubs. Then, in 1997, the West Side opened, bringing in new family-friendly venues like the House of Blues, Bongo's Cuban Cafe, AMC Theaters, and the Virgin Megastore. And at the very center of this new district, Disney carved out space for a massive 100,000 square foot windowless building for something entirely different. DisneyQuest, a 5-story indoor theme park built around the premise of interactive technology. But DisneyQuest wasn't just an isolated project. It came from a larger push from then CEO Michael Eisner, who had the idea of location-based entertainment, building smaller regional Disney attractions that families could visit without a week-long vacation and substantial travel plans. This effort was housed under Disney Regional Entertainment, a division created to develop these regional experiences. Their portfolio would eventually include 3 large experiments: children's play centers known as Club Disney, a sports and dining chain called the ESPN Zone, and of course, DisneyQuest. Club Disney came first. These were themed play centers designed for kids under 10, featuring indoor playgrounds, small shows, games, and other curated activities for children. The first location opened in 1997 in Thousand Oaks, California, with additional sites in Arizona and Colorado, but the concept was short-lived, closing in 1999 just after 2 years due to poor attendance. Next came the ESPN Zone. The first location opened in 1998 in Baltimore, combining a full-service sports bar and restaurant with large-scale arcade-style games and broadcast studios. More locations followed in Chicago, New York, and other cities, each branded as the ultimate sports dining and entertainment complex. Unlike Club Disney, the ESPN Zone managed to last much longer, eventually closing in June of 2018, though most locations closed by 2010. Still, these projects showed Disney's willingness to experiment with new formats outside of the parks, and Disney's market research continued to suggest that families wanted more ways to experience Disney closer to home, with short, affordable visits that could be repeated often. DisneyQuest was designed to be the flagship of that idea, a digital indoor theme park scalable to cities across the country. Disney Regional Entertainment envisioned DisneyQuest as a nationwide chain, with as many as 20 or 30 locations across the US and Canada. The Orlando flagship location opened in June of 1998, followed by a second location 1 year later in Chicago, at the new Northbridge development near the Magnificent Mile. A Philadelphia location was also announced in late 1998, planned for the site of the old Gimbel's department store downtown, with a location in Toronto being rumored to follow. Disney had high expectations for Chicago, projecting more than 3 million visitors a year, or roughly 8,000 people a day. But reality fell far short. Tickets for DisneyQuest cost around $34 for adults and $25 for kids, almost the same as a Walt Disney World park ticket at the time. For teenagers, the primary audience they were aiming for, that was far too expensive to casually spend on a 2 to 3 hour experience. For tourists, Chicago already had landmarks like the Sears Tower, Millennium Park, the Field Museum, and other numerous spots competing for their attention. And business travelers or convention guests were more likely to gravitate nearby to Disney's other project, the ESPN Zone, rather than an arcade designed for teenagers. As attendance continued to fall well below expectations, within just over 2 years, Chicago's DisneyQuest closed on September 4th, 2001. And with that failure, Philadelphia's DisneyQuest was also canceled. The site where construction was starting sat untouched for years, earning the nickname from locals as the Disney Hole. An entire website was dedicated for this as well if you'd like to go check it out. The closure of the Chicago location was a turning point. Expansion plans were abandoned, and control of Orlando's DisneyQuest was shifted back to Walt Disney World. But while the dream of a national chain ended almost as soon as it began, the Orlando flagship would remain open for nearly 2 decades. So let's step inside this location and see what made DisneyQuest so unique for its time. When guests first walked into DisneyQuest, they would enter a room decorated with a sky-painted dome and columns topped with Disney characters. Past the turnstiles, guests would board the Cyberlator, a themed elevator that doubled as a pre-show. As the elevator ascended, Genie from Aladdin would appear on screen, getting you ready for your adventure. It was an extra touch of Disney charm and a fun way of masking the simple act of riding an elevator. When the doors opened, guests arrived directly at Ventureport, the central hub of DisneyQuest. From here, guests would have the choice of which attraction zone that they wanted to visit first. Floors 1 and 2 contained the Explore Zone, which contained mostly VR-style rides, and the Create Zone, where guests designed rides, toys, and made art. Floors 3, 4, and 5 housed the Score Zone, home to competitive and physical games, and the Replay Zone, which held more classic and retro arcade games. We'll go by these one by one, starting with the ground floor and making our way up. On the first floor, one of the first attractions guests encountered here was Virtual Jungle Cruise. The ride starred Wayne Szalinski from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, who unintentionally sent guests back to a prehistoric jungle full of dinosaurs. Guests were then sent on a mission to retrieve the time travel gizmo by navigating a river so they can return to present day. Guests would sit in an inflatable raft in front of a screen using paddles to steer along branching paths and caves, all while being surrounded by dinosaurs. As a kid, I remember it being incredibly difficult to steer the raft, but it was still a lot of fun and was pretty impressive for its time. Next, there was Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for Buccaneer Gold, which placed guests inside a room themed to the deck of a pirate ship. Up to 7 guests could play, one steering the ship and the rest manning the cannons, as you would battle pirates and monsters across a 3-part storyline and then end up with a final boss battle. It was incredibly fun for its time and could have easily held up today if it was integrated with the VR headset and if the graphics were updated a little bit more. But before Pirates of the Caribbean took over the space, it was formerly home to Hercules in the Underworld, a very short-lived game that closed just after 2 years. In this game, up to 6 guests controlled characters from the movie using joysticks inside a room similar to the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction. The goal was to collect lightning bolts and find Hades, where you can face him off in a battle. Floor 1 also featured Treasures of the Incas, a unique attraction where guests controlled a small remote-control car inside a maze beneath a transparent floor. The game required 2 players. One would be at a station along the wall, steering the vehicle and watching their truck's point of view on a video screen, while another player could see the vehicles below a clear plastic floor and shout directions. Eventually, the attraction started becoming plagued by interference from cell phones, and eventually closed in 2007 after one of the trucks caught fire. Next up on floor 2, one of the biggest draws here was Cyberspace Mountain, which allowed guests to design their own virtual roller coaster. Guests started at a design kiosk, where they would build a roller coaster using a touchscreen with options for loop, corkscrews, hills, and speed zones. The process was guided by Bill Nye the Science Guy, who gave feedback on how intense your design was, and if it was too intense, you could use the Thrill-O-Meter to dial it back. Once you were finished, you would board a 2-person motion simulator capsule. Capsule would move and flip to match your coaster design. Guests also had the option to purchase a video recording of themselves riding their coaster for $12. This attraction is one of the very few from DisneyQuest that I still think would actually hold up pretty well today, and interestingly enough, the motion simulator capsules are in fact still used today. Over at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex, the capsules were repurposed and are being used as a lander and rover simulator to drive on Mars as part of their astronaut training experience. So if you ever wanted to sit in a piece of Disney history, you can head there and sign up for the experience. Next is Aladdin's Magic Carpet Ride. This attraction used a VR headset while you sat on a motorcycle-type seat to simulate flying through Agrabah on a magic carpet. The goal was to rescue Genie by navigating through obstacles, which you would do by leaning and steering. Though groundbreaking in 1998, the VR quickly felt dated. The headsets were huge and heavy, and visuals fell quickly behind home video game consoles. Still, at launch, this was one of the first mainstream VR attractions anywhere, long before it was common to have these at home, so still very impressive even for just a short period of time. There were also a few other smaller creative stations on this floor. Like the versions you'd commonly see across the parks, the Animation Academy taught guests how to draw Disney characters. The key difference was that here you used styluses and digital drawing tablets, and your final artwork could be printed out and taken home. Another station was Living Easels, where guests used digital brushes to create animated paintings, which would have been similar to drawing on an iPad. Sid's Create-A-Toy let kids assemble Frankenstein-style toy designs from various different parts. Once finished, you could purchase your creation as a real physical toy kit from the gift shop on the bottom floor. And lastly, you had Radio Disney Songmaker, where guests could create their own song by choosing a genre, lyrics, and a singer from a touchscreen. The system generated a pop song, which you could then burn onto a CD and take home. Next up on floor 3 was my favorite attraction in all of DisneyQuest, Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blaster. This was a bumper cars-like attraction where you would shoot asteroids at other riders. They were basically like thick foam balls. The ride vehicle sat 2 guests, one who drove and the other operated the cannon. The guest who drove the car would run over the asteroids, which would scoop them up off the floor and place them in your vehicle. The other guest would then load them into the cannon and fire them at opposing cars. The goal was to hit the asteroid at the target on the other car, causing them to spin. It was extremely loud and chaotic, but incredibly fun and replayable. Another main attraction on this floor was Mighty Ducks Pinball Slam. Here, up to 12 players stood on motion platforms facing a giant screen. Each platform controlled a digital pinball, and by rocking back and forth, you moved your ball across the screen to score points. Although it mostly didn't work that well and was pretty confusing. Spread throughout floors 3, 4, and 5 were a variety of arcade cabinets, all set to free-to-play mode, which were sectioned into different game genres and themes. Here on floor 3, you had the Race Zone, featuring competitive arcade racers. There was also the Underground Arcade, featuring both classic and modern arcade titles, fighting games, shooters, rhythm games, and retro cabinets. I won't get into these too much since they're just arcade cabinets, and DisneyQuest only contained one game, Fix-It Felix, based off the Wreck-It Ralph film that was exclusive to the arcade. Up on floor 4, one of the standout attractions was Ride the Comics, with an original story and characters scripted by show writer David Cohen. This was a VR game where up to 6 guests would team up and step into a comic book world armed with a laser sword and battle supervillains. It was ambitious for its time, but like Aladdin's Magic Carpet Ride, the VR capabilities aged quickly, and it wasn't long before the game felt clunky and outdated. In 2014, Ride the Comics permanently closed and the floor space was converted into extra dining seating for their quick service restaurant. There were more arcade cabinets on this floor as well, in a section featuring sports-themed arcade games such as basketball, baseball, air hockey, fishing, and the likes. Floor 4 also contained a children's play zone, designed for younger guests, featuring more simple and easy-to-play games. The last thing featured on this floor was the Wonderland Cafe, which offered coffee and light snacks with a seating area where guests could take a break. It also had public computer kiosks, where you could browse the internet and send digital postcards. Very novel for the late 90s. Finally, on floor 5, there was another station for the Ride the Comics attraction, identical to the one on the 4th floor. Otherwise, the headliner attraction here was Invasion, an extraterrestrial alien encounter, loosely tied to the now-defunct Magic Kingdom attraction. 4 players boarded a simulator pod, with one guest driving and the other on blaster turrets. The goal was to rescue stranded astronauts from hostile aliens. The game even featured actor Jeffrey Jones as Chairman Clench, reprising his role from the original attraction. Like all of the other video game-focused attractions, the visuals became dated fairly quickly. But for the time, and certainly as a kid, I remember this being really cool since you at least got to sit in this massive simulator pod. And to finish off the last of the arcade cabinets, floor 5 also contained more classic games and some pinball machines as well. The top floor also housed Food Quest, DisneyQuest's main dining location. It was a quick service restaurant offering typical things you would expect from a food court. Prior to this, though, it used to be a Cheesecake Factory Express, a quick-service restaurant offering snacks and desserts from the Cheesecake Factory. But when its 10-year lease expired in 2008, Disney didn't renew, and it was replaced with Food Quest. Back on the ground floor, like many Disney attractions, you ended at the gift shop. The DisneyQuest Emporium sold DisneyQuest-branded merchandise and also tied directly to the upstairs Create Zone. This is where you could purchase toys you designed at Sid's Create-A-Toy or CDs from the Radio Disney Songmaker. Although, by the end of DisneyQuest's life, it was turned into a more generic gift shop that sold typical merchandise you could find across property. But with that, our tour of DisneyQuest comes to an end. So, what happened to DisneyQuest in Orlando, and why did it fail after being open for nearly 20 years? Well, for one, technology has always been rapidly evolving, which made things that were once highly impressive and futuristic very short-lived and quickly obsolete. For example, VR headsets, while expensive, can now be purchased easily at your local big box retail store and offer a far superior experience than attractions like Ride the Comics. Home video game consoles were also becoming more commonplace by the early 2000s, and by the PS2 era, which was only 2 years after DisneyQuest opened, they far surpassed experiences DisneyQuest was providing, even if they were interactive. And now, in modern day, these attractions don't even shine a light compared to the games we can now have on our smartphones. Which brings us to a severe lack of updates. Just a few short years after the Orlando location opened, Disney stopped investing in anything besides basically only keeping the place open and the lights turned on. There weren't any updates made to the existing attractions, and when effects stopped working, Disney simply turned them off, instead of putting in the effort to bring them back to their original glory. For example, the Cyberlator stopped playing the pre-show animation in 2011, and for the next 6 years until DisneyQuest closed, it was a simple, quiet elevator ride to the 3rd floor instead. And my last big reason for the fall of DisneyQuest is the entertainment competition nearby. Orlando has several major theme parks to visit, and even Disney's own offerings made DisneyQuest feel redundant. With its lack of updates to modernize the complex, prices that guests weren't willing to justify, and the multitude of other much more sought-after parks and entertainment venues to visit, there is simply no place for visitors to fit DisneyQuest in their busy schedules. So with that, DisneyQuest officially closed in Orlando on July 2nd, 2017, after nearly 2 decades. When DisneyQuest closed, the building was demolished and replaced by the NBA Experience, which opened in August of 2019. It was marketed as an interactive basketball attraction, but was widely criticized for being niche and overpriced. The timing didn't help either. It opened just months before the pandemic and closed permanently in March of 2020 after less than a year of operation, with the building sitting vacant ever since, aside from some random pop-up experiences that they've hosted inside here and there. Now, Disney has announced a new tenant, Level 99, potentially trying to carry on the legacy of DisneyQuest in a new and updated format. Locations already exist in a few cities across the United States, and while I haven't been, the reviews I've read online seem to lean pretty positive. The location at Disney Springs will be the largest location to be built, and will feature over 60 challenge rooms and head-to-head duels built around physical and mental puzzles, as well as scavenger hunts and a full kitchenette bar. For Disney, this move is much more simple. Leasing the building to an outside company is cheaper and less risky than reinvesting in a project like DisneyQuest that they had already abandoned. And while Level 99 will probably be fun, especially as someone who loves themed escape rooms and interactive puzzles, at the end of the day, it's just another chain concept that could and is being built anywhere. Maybe it will thrive where DisneyQuest failed, but whether it does or not, it won't carry the same charm or legacy. DisneyQuest captured a sense of experimentation that we don't often see from Disney anymore. And even if it aged quickly, it proved they were still willing to try bold ideas outside of their comfort zone. Unfortunately, the quick failure of the Chicago location discouraged Disney from making any updates or investing heavily into the Orlando location when it was open. Technology began to move forward, but DisneyQuest didn't, and it got stuck in that awkward place of being too outdated to impress, yet not old enough to feel nostalgic. For all its flaws, though, it still had that unmistakable Disney touch, built in the golden era of Disney's creativity, where they weren't interested in a third-party plug-and-play operation for the sole fact of it being cheaper and lower risk, but rather showcasing the originality that set Disney apart from everybody else.